Hey yogis, welcome back to another episode of How Yoga Changed My Life, a podcast. This is Mia. In this week's episode, Adrienne traveled to Chicago and interviewed a friend of 10 years, Hannah. In this episode, you're going to hear about a life-changing event, as well as how she used yoga after that life-changing event. And it all fits in with that theme of yoga changing lives. Let's dive into it.
Okay. I knew you would love this. What's my yoga origin story? I first found yoga when I was a kid. Okay, then.
Okay, ready?
Can we swear?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lots.
great.
Lots
Okay.
of swearing.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of swearing. I love, you know me, I could never do a podcast that I don't swear in. I would be so restricted and so not myself. It's hard enough in yoga classes not to be like, move your fucking leg.
I know. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Here we Namaste, yogis. This is Adrienne with How Yoga Changed My Life, a podcast. I am so excited to be here today. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm back in what I consider my hometown because it's probably the longest place I've lived, in Oak Park, Illinois, right outside of Chicago, with one of the most important people in my life, Hannah. Hannah, how are you today?
I'm so good. I'm like giddy.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Hannah and I go back, we've known each other now for almost 10 years.
Yeah, like 2013.
2013, yeah, 2013. That's when I started going to the studio. Isn't that crazy?
I know.
This is our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
It's also another anniversary, which we'll get into shortly,
Yes.
too.
Yes.
So, Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a fitness instructor full-time. Started teaching yoga in 2011. So I teach not just yoga, I teach spin, group fitness, all the different disciplines. Still live in the area. Miss you when you moved away.
I know. 3.5 years. It's been a long time.
Yeah, but we still keep in touch.
All the time. Yep.
We, speak, text, talk on the phone regularly. Yeah, so I teach fitness, not full-time. We'll get into that also. I
Yep.
used to teach full-time, scaled back to part-time.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm married, have a dog.
The
He's
most
getting up there.
amazing. I know. How old is he now?
He's almost 12. Wow. I know. And
the
it's
best.
scary because I'm getting, some TikToks now that are like, when you have a senior dog, what to start to do. I'm like, no.
No, don't tell me that.
Don't,
tell me that.
no. He's fine.
He's
himself.
fine. He's fine.
yeah.
Then you're from Oak Park.
Yeah.
Grew up here.
Born and raised. Mm-hmm.
Your parents are amazing. They're two of
Yep.
my favorite people on the planet.
They love you.
Love them. Shout out to
They're both retired.
Yeah. Shout out to the K's,
They're still working pretty much full time, taking care of my nieces.
of course, which is so cool.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Oak Park. Tell me, when did you first find yoga? What's your yoga origin story?
So I started, doing yoga and videos. My mom had, Rodney Yee VHS and DVDs. So I would do that, at home. I was on the dance team. I never really considered myself an athlete. My brother was always the athlete. I have one older brother.
It's so funny because I always thought of you as an athlete.
People have said that to me. It's like, no, I have no hand-eye coordination.
Can't catch for
You
shit.
throw any type of ball at me, I will duck. Will not catch it. Will not happen. But I was on the dance team. I did, not like I studied classical ballet or anything, but I did like jazz dance classes, dance team in high school. But then I would, just do like AM yoga, PM yoga videos. And then in college, I wasn't a college athlete, wasn't on the dance team in college or anything. But
And
there
you went
was
to
Northwestern.
Smarty
Evanston.
pants.
Yeah.
Smarty
I
pants.
tend to just say, I went to school in Evanston because I say Northwestern. People are like, oh, well.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you are smart and you should get credit for going to that. That's close to like an Ivy League school, isn't it? Is a Ivy?
It's not.
Okay. It should be.
It's in the, top 15.
It's
usually.
crazy.
It varies, but
So cool.
it's a good school. I worked hard for it.
Yeah, you did.
There was one specific day I remember. Me and my friend were super hungover. This is
College story.
yes. This is
Most stories from college start with, I was super hungover.
It's not like my yoga origin story is like I just needed something else in my life. It's like me and my friend were super hungover.
I love it. I love it.
And this was back in the day of AOL Instant Messenger, and we were just chatting from our separate dorms. We're like, oh, I wish we could just like sweat all of this out. And I forget if it was me or her saying like, oh, I think there's like a type of yoga, like hot yoga. And so one of us, we were just Googling, and at the time, I believe, I could be completely wrong, I believe there were only 2 hot yoga studios in the Chicago area. So this was not in Evanston.
Right.
We went to Chicago to a Bikram yoga studio, took a Bikram yoga class, thinking really for the purposes of just sweating out all the toxins, all the alcohol that we had in us.
Right. I bet you smelled really good in that class.
We just everyone around us was just soaking in everything from the night before.
All the smells, the beer,
We smelled great.
tequila, yeah, all of it.
But I was obsessed. I loved it.
Like instantly.
Instantly. My friend, I remember afterwards, I was like, what'd you think? She's like, every muscle in my body hurts. I'm never going back. I think we had either like a 3-day pass or a week pass. I used up every single day.
Wow.
Just by myself. My friends never came with me. I was on my own, but I
Did that intimidate you at all? Like going, because you went with a friend first, but then you went by yourself. You were just like, I'm in it. I'm going.
Yeah, once I had my friend go with me that initial time,
Yeah.
and I walked through the doors, it was like, okay, I have my bearings. I know what this is. I'm good.
Yeah, that's a lot of times. Like, I know I was really intimidated to go to a yoga class for the first time and walk into a yoga studio because you just have these preconceived notions of what you're walking into, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I had never been in an actual yoga studio. And so really I thought it was going to be like a chill, we're going to sweat it out. And
Right.
it was intense.
Oh my gosh, yes. If anybody, listeners out there that don't know, Bikram yoga, he's an asshole in my opinion, but the style of yoga comes from his teacher, not from him as much. That sequence of, 28 poses, if you count. 26,
yeah.
and then the breath, right? And it's the same every time. It's 90 minutes. It's intense. It's difficult. And you are in a room that's 105 degrees and you are sweating your ass off the entire time. Absolutely. So you kept going.
Yeah, and I think I enjoyed it so much because it was not my preconceived notion of what yoga was. It was challenging. It was just, they're like talking, clap, okay, break.
Yeah.
And it was, I had a dance background. So it was almost this like, try to reach perfection of this pose and then break. Try to get to the best that you can of this pose and then come out of it. So there's almost no time to even think about what you're doing. They're talking.
Yeah.
They're challenging you to get to this perfection.
Yeah.
And then stop.
Yeah. And perfection in air quotes, right?
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
they had an opinion of what perfection was based off of his body, which is totally different than the way that I view yoga, that you view yoga, is that you don't have to be him to, be perfect. There's no perfect. It's
100%.
progress.
100%.
Cool.
But there was this competitiveness
Oh, totally.
around it
Bikram,
that
totally.
I had not grown up in athletics, but suddenly I found myself being good at this thing that I saw that was athletic. I was like, I can do this on my
Right.
mat that is
Challenging.
athletic and
Yeah.
challenging, and I'm succeeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So how long did you go? How did you afford it? Was it expensive for you to go?
It was. A lot of, the money from college jobs went towards that.
Yeah.
And I was going pretty much every day.
Wow.
Like my college schedule, like per, Northwestern is on a quarter system. So if one quarter I wanted to go to like the 9:30 a.m. class, I would rearrange my schedule. So like, I'm going to take afternoon classes this
awesome.
quarter.
That's awesome. So
And
you
then-
actually knew at that point you had to rearrange your whole schedule so that you could have this in your life.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a big commitment.
And it's not, you have to make sure that you don't have too much food on your stomach. You have to go, the travel time to 90 minutes for the class.
It's a big commitment.
It was like 3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something that, I mean, in college, to go that early in the morning too, right? Before noon, getting up out of bed, that shows a discipline and a commitment to something. Very cool.
Looking back, I'm like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
Especially where my yoga practice and just where my fitness is now and where my mind is now. Like, what was I doing? But
Yeah.
I was in love with it.
So how long did you practice at that studio? Like the whole time you were in college kind of thing?
Probably about a year. It got to a point, so there's it's like the beginner Bikram, air quotes.
Right, right.
The 26 poses. And then there's an advanced Bikram, which is, you get invited to it.
Oh, it's special.
So, yes.
So exclusive.
Yes, it's very exclusive. After you've been practicing for a certain amount of time, they see you developing. I got invited to the advanced series, after the beginner class. So I think it's 84 poses.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So the 26 poses are contained within the 84 poses. And
It's just like adding on to it kind of thing?
Yes. And they recommend that you take the 90-minute class and then stay. It's like a 3-hour class.
Wait, the 84 pose class is after your 90-minute class?
Well, you could just do the 84, but they're like the 90-minute 26 poses is like the warm-up for the 3 hours.
The fucking warm-up. Are you kidding me?
It was like, okay, great.
Oh my God.
I was down for anything.
You
I
were
was
like, I'm
sure.
done.
Yeah, sign me up.
So how long was the 84 pose one? Was that another 90 minutes?
It's like 3 hours.
Oh my, wait,
Yeah.
3 hours on top of the 90? Oh my, so you'd be there all day.
And they're like, but we turn off the heat. It's still humid and hot.
Oh God, yeah, it doesn't really leave that quickly.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it was intense. But the thing that kind of was a light bulb moment for me was that in the 3 hours advanced series, they do sun salutations. Which I was like, what is this? We're going up, we're going down. Everybody knows what to do.
Yeah.
There's chaturangas, and I felt like I had gotten to a point in the Bikram series, like these poses, my body feels great. I look great. I felt like I had no upper body strength whatsoever. I was trying to lower myself down, and I felt like my triceps, my chest, I was like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a moment where I realized I need to incorporate other things into my workout.
Yeah.
I need to hit the gym.
Yeah.
I need to lift some weights.
Yeah.
I need to not just do this every day.
So is that what you ended up doing, is kind of shifting away from Bikram and going more into the gym?
Yeah.
Cool. And then you graduated college. And then where did you go from there?
So I started teaching high school,
Okay.
and that left no time to do anything.
And where were you teaching high school?
I was long-term subbing in the Main Township district for like a year and a half. And then I went and taught English in China.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that? Yeah.
And how long were you there for? You were only there for a few years?
I was there for a year.
A year, okay.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Did you do yoga over there? Did you work out over there?
I worked out. There was a gym across from the school where I was. So I ran. I did. Oh, this is just coming back to me right this second. There was a Pilates class. So I did that a little bit.
In China? Oh, that's very cool. That's very
spoken
cool.
in Mandarin, but just following along.
It's pretty interesting because, like, if you go and you take a class in another language, like I've taken yoga in Espanol, and I don't speak Spanish at all. I try, but I can't. Not a good pronunciation person. But going and taking a class when there's that rhythm of breath, like Pilates and like yoga, you kind of just go with the flow, right? And the words kind of match too. It's weird.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. So then you were there. You were there for a year, and then what'd you do? You came back here? Came back to Oak Park?
So while I was in China, the studio where we ended up meeting and working together opened while I was away.
Got it.
And what we were talking about before, like the hesitancy to go into a studio alone, my mom and I had a discussion because she is not one to,
Oh, no. Mom's got to know what's going on first.
totally.
Your mom's a planner.
Yeah, totally. She needs to know everything ahead of time, what's going on.
Yep. And you don't fuck with Nora either, by the way.
No.
She's the best.
She is not one to fuck with. So I remember her and I had a discussion because she was like, the studio just opened up. It looks like, the classes, it's nearby. She's like, should I go? I was like, yeah, just go, try it out. And normally I would go with her, but
Right.
I'm in China.
Right.
So she went, took a class, and she ended up signing up for a membership, which was very...
out of her league, like normal, I shouldn't say out of her league, but out of her like normal, gut instincts.
100%. Yeah.
That's so cool.
She's one to like work out at home, do her videos. So the fact that she signed up for a membership, I was like, oh, this place must be good.
Yeah.
So when I came home, I went to the studio, took some classes, fell in love with it, and then signed up for teacher training.
Wow. Yeah, that was a great studio we worked at together. We had some really great memories. So I started going to the studio where you were teaching, and then like a year later signed up for teacher training. And I don't even know how long it was after that I became the manager. And then we had to relocate the studio. But around that time, which tomorrow will be the anniversary of it, is we call it Hannah's Stroke-a-versary.
Yeah.
So Hannah was 29, right? You were 29 when that happened. So will you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yes.
If you can remember. I know some of it's
No,
hard.
it's I remember too much.
Probably too much, yeah. Yeah. I do too, because I was there when it was happening.
Yeah. So I when I was 29, I had just what I thought was a horrible headache. And the day that you were there in the studio, I was teaching a class, and I remember vividly teaching, and it felt like the words that were coming out of my mouth, I remember hearing my voice like a Peanuts character, like a parent.
Like
in
the
Peanuts,
wah,
like
wah, wah, wah,
my
wah,
voice was just outside of my body.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, like, okay, I can, I just have the muscle memory. I can continue on with the class. I know the sequence, but something is wrong.
I was in the office and I was hearing you. And I remember like I was doing work. So I was like, you're just background noise most of the time. When I'm in there, the teachers are teaching. And I just remember my ears perked up and I was like, she doesn't sound right. Something's going on. And I had this feeling, and then you came out. And then what happened?
Well, once the class was done, my adrenaline dropped. So then it was like, okay, something is really wrong. And I remember a student, like I was hunched over at the front desk.
Because you had the worst headache, right?
It was like my head was throbbing to the point where I felt nauseous and couldn't eat or couldn't sleep.
It was like a couple of days that you went like that too before this class happened.
Yes. And looking back, I should have just gone to urgent care, gone to the ER way before I did. But, your mind is like, it can't be that bad.
Right.
So then a couple days later, later that day I went to urgent care. First it must be a bad sinus infection. Then, it must be a really bad migraine that presents like a stroke. Yeah. And then finally, a few days after this, Northwestern Memorial, shout out, amazing. Thank you. They admitted me because they're like, yes, you're having a stroke.
At 29 years old.
Yes. I had, what ended up happening was I had a big blood clot in my brain that had gotten to the point where it was so big that it had broken off into smaller clots and was just blocking all the blood vessels in my brain so that no blood was draining. And so it was blocking all the oxygen in my brain.
And wasn't the blood clots, they were located at the base of the back of your skull or something on the back of your brain, or was it?
It's like the bottom right is where like the actual stroke happened, but it was kind of all over. Yeah. At least from what, I was out of it, but they were showing my parents. They were like, "Yeah, there's a clot here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So when you got to the hospital, what did they do?
They took a CAT scan. They did a ton of blood tests, all the neurological tests you can. And I remember they put me on a blood thinner IV drip. And then at one point I remember them saying, if, the blood thinner drip should start working, we'll keep monitoring it. If it doesn't start to break up soon, we might have to break these up with radiation. Luckily, they started to, break up. And then they put EEG electrodes on my brain, which I didn't. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
you guys know what you're doing.
Exactly. Go for it. I'm still. Were you still in pain, or did they give you stuff?
Oh, I was in pain for weeks and weeks. They put me on. They gave me, pain medication because there was just so much. There was so much pressure. It was, yes, for a long time. And then the next day, I had a massive seizure.
I remember you telling me that story because your brother was there.
Yes. So the reason they put the electrodes on was just not that they assumed or knew that it was going to happen, but just that there was a likelihood that could happen.
So can you want to describe what happened or what you remember of what happened?
Yeah. So I was sitting up in the hospital bed. The nurse was with me. They were moving me from the bed to the chair just to get a little change of scenery. My mom and my dad had gone just to get something to eat because they, I was going to be in the ICU for the, next few days. And I think right as I got moved to the chair, my left arm started to shake uncontrollably. And I remember thinking, this is weird because I have no feeling on my entire left side.
Wow. Did that just happen when you had no feeling on the left side?
Well, when I got admitted the night before, I had no feeling whatsoever.
Wow.
They were doing all of these, can you feel anything in your left foot? No. Can you feel anything in your left arm? No. So once I had the seizure, my left arm just started shaking uncontrollably. I was like, it's moving on its own. That's weird.
Yeah.
And then my left shoulder, my entire left side just started shaking. And my chest tightened and I couldn't breathe.
Oh, God.
And I remember my brother was in my eye line and the look he gave me was just like, oh, okay, this might be it.
Oh, my God. It's I just got chills all over my body.
And that was the last thing I remember.
How long did that seizure last? Do you know?
I don't know because I blacked out.
Yeah.
So a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
My brother was the only family member in the room. And he said, the doctors all came in. They were completely composed and just asked him to move to the side and took care of it. So I guess I was convulsing and then just, stiff. And then they rushed me down to get a CAT scan just to make sure there was no hemorrhaging in my brain. But then I woke up still in the CAT scan machine.
Oh my gosh.
Which was a different level of
fear.
Because the last thing I remembered was not being able to breathe. And then all of a sudden I have an oxygen mask on.
And you're in a tube.
And I'm being asked to be still.
Holy shit.
So that was the first and only panic attack I've ever had.
Wow. I would, yeah, that would be incredibly scary.
But the nurses, again, Northwestern, they were incredible because they kept saying, Hannah, your oxygen's at 100%. You're okay.
Oh, wow.
You're okay. They just kept reassuring me. And I remember the technician came in and said, we just need to get one more picture. So there was one part of my brain, even though I was freaking out, it was like, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here so bad. I know this guy only needs to get one more picture. I know I need to be still. I want to be still for him, but I want to get out of here. So there was this dichotomy of what
do I do?
What do I do? Okay, try to be still. But I want to get the fuck out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. So then what happened after that?
So then I went back to the room and bringing it back to yoga. While all this was happening and they took me down to get the CAT scan, they were having a discussion with my family to let them know because my family was
freaking out, I'm sure.
Well, they took them into this room.
The scary room.
The scary room of like if something bad happens
Yep.
to a loved one.
Yep.
So like if you're crying, sobbing,
Yeah, it's like soundproof room in the hospital or something. That's what I felt like when Brian had his stroke or his heart attack and the brain tumor. It was the same thing.
We'll keep you out from view.
Right, exactly. There's an exit that we can take you out so that you don't scare the shit out of everybody else in the rooms. It's awful, but it's true. And it's kind of nice in a way. At least they're not like doing it in public places. Like, hey, guess what? This is serious.
So they were giving them like a very nice neurologist from what my family said was just walking them through like, okay, they took her down. Here's, the possible next steps of what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. They're giving her a CAT scan. Most likely she's going to be intubated. It's might take, however long when she comes out of it. She'll probably be, might not remember your names.
All the scary
things.
Jeez.
And, my family's like, how did this happen? She's so young. And then somebody else came into the room and said, I don't know. I think this was in a span of like half hour, 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And told my family, she's awake and she's asking for her family.
That's awesome.
And through all of it, I think a big part of it was just even unconscious, having body awareness, breath awareness.
Yes.
And being able to, come back to your breath.
Right. Come back into yourself.
Literally
like that.
Come back into your body.
Yeah. I mean, that is like, that just gave me chills too, because if you didn't have that body awareness, if you didn't have that connection with yourself, mm-hmm. right? Your true, because you're saying that dichotomy of like, oh my God, I want to freak out. This is awful, to the, no, just stay still for one more picture. I can't remember exactly when I started texting your mom, but like I started texting your mom and like wanting to know what was going on. And, I was because at the time you were my boss. Yeah. Remember? That was cool. Like you became region manager and I was a studio manager and we got really close really quickly. So how long were you at the hospital? What did happen after that? Like you don't have to go into complete detail, but like how long you were there and how all that happened to get you home.
I was at the hospital for 5 or 6 days,
mm-hmm.
ICU for either 3 or 4, and then moved out of the ICU.
Mm-hmm.
And then in day rehab for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. They expected me to be in day rehab, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy for 4 to 6 weeks. And I was only in there for 2 weeks.
You were like, that's one of the things that I think is because of your yoga practice, is that it could have been longer if you didn't have the body awareness and breath that you had. So what is day rehab? Is that like you go home and then they take you there? Because like what I don't remember when you came home, were you still not having any feeling in the left side of your body? When did that start to come back?
The feeling started to come back when I was still in the hospital.
Good.
Like I started to have feeling so the stroke affected my left side.
Mm-hmm.
I got feeling back into like my left foot, my leg. It still affected, my left arm, my hand more. But I was able to walk. So even in the hospital, I was able to walk. Not a straight line, but I was curving around a little bit.
It's like drunky Hannah walking down the hallways.
Totally.
But the fact that you were able to walk after having multiple seizures, a grand mal seizure, having a panic attack, all while having a fucking stroke at the same time. It's insane what your body went through. It's absolutely insane. Crazy walker. That's so funny.
And I remember in the hospital, I was like, no, I'm good. And then I think it was the occupational therapist. She was like, okay, look down. And my left foot was completely turned out.
Wow.
Like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I need to work on that.
That's crazy. So it's almost like that. It's weird to me too, that like the arm didn't come back first. Cause you think the arm would come back before the leg, but but I guess gravity, I don't know. It's weird. So when you came home, you had a cane, didn't you? Is that all you had, or were you in a wheelchair?
No, I had a cane. I still have a cane.
Yeah.
Every now and then, if I have a really bad day, you know, I might bust out the cane.
Good.
But yeah, I got a cane in the hospital. For the first few weeks, I had, you know, a shower chair. And for 2 weeks, I was in day rehab. So I only had to go to rehabilitation therapy during the daytime. So it wasn't 24 hours.
Right.
And I only had to go for a half day.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah, so it wasn't the full day session. And, you know, there's speech therapy, occupational therapy, which I knew nothing about going into that. And it truly is to get you ready for whatever your occupation is.
Yeah.
And was incredible to witness.
That's very cool. Tell me more.
So, you know, there would be people writing things down, getting their hands in better shape, cognitive things. And for me, because my occupation is fitness, a lot of my occupational therapy was similar to the physical therapy because so much of what I do is physical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some of my occupational therapy hours would be more like the physical therapy hours.
That's awesome. And so what are some of the like highlights or the landmarks that you remember through this, and how yoga kind of helped you along that way?
Well, so for occupational therapy, for example, I shouldn't say just occupation. It kind of just also gets you prepped for getting back into like everyday life.
Right.
So like one of the sessions was like, let's have you, you know, cook a meal. So they have a kitchen with everything that you need,
Oh, wow.
you know, to prep. So I remember being in the kitchen, you know, one time I made cookies, one time I made pasta, and bringing it back to just, you know, the mind-body awareness. There were a couple moments where it was like, okay, I need to take a step back. I need to focus on my breath. I'm getting overwhelmed. I have to sit down and just sit until I was able to stand back up again.
And you just focus on your breath and just kind of calming down and being, because I think that most people blow past that, right? We have expectations for ourselves. So we'll say like, oh no, I got to keep going. I got to keep going. You know, lean into the anxiety, right? Lean into the stress, because that's what we're used to doing in life. But for you to take that pause and recognize like, no, if I keep going down this road, it's not going to be good. So I'm going to take a seat.
Yeah, it honestly was just building up the stamina to stand at a stove long enough to make, you know,
That's crazy.
20-minute pasta or 12-minute cookies or whatever.
Well, and then this not just affected you physically, but like think about where you lived on your own. You had a dog, you had a car, you had freedom, you had independence. So how is that like, having to kind of accept this new way of life and what that looked like?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So I kind of think of it like pre-stroke and post-stroke. And even post-stroke, there's been multiple iterations. Because I've always thought of myself as a very independent person, but I've just kind of had to accept that I'm still independent, but independent in different ways. I'm not driving, but I can still show my independence in such and such way.
Yeah. It's just a different way of looking at it, right? Yeah. And you need help. All of us do need help. And that's probably the hardest thing for any strong woman to ask for is help, right? We feel weak when we have to ask for help. I loved my part of your journey is just, I wanted to be with you. You were my manager. We were moving the studio at the time, and there was a lot going on, and you just started to kind of come back into work, remember? And I remember taking you to day rehab.
You did. You would you wouldn't even offer. You would just say, so I'm driving you, right? So I'm driving you.
Yeah.
You would just say like, okay, so we're going to such and such, and I'll pick you up. And I, especially in the very beginning, had such a hard time asking for a ride anywhere. I didn't want to inconvenience anybody. And you just, so I'm giving you a ride. Yeah.
I didn't want you to have to ask, you know, I wanted you to know that it was fine. There was no inconvenience. I mean, fuck, we live in Oak Park, or I lived in Oak Park, you live in Oak Park, Forest Park. It's like 8 minutes to get from one side to the other. And that's it. It's not a big deal. You know, it was never a big deal for me. And all I wanted to do was offer that space for you so that you didn't have to worry.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have to worry about it. It was silly, but it was the one thing that I could do consistently, you know? So when you started to kind of go through the occupational therapy, the physical therapy, when did you kind of come back to yoga practice?
Within a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't work for a few months.
Right.
So I came back to my yoga practice and to managing, and it was too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was working full time, and looking back, it was too much.
Yeah. But you didn't know that at the time, right? I mean, you're taking the steps in the right way to kind of get from, okay, cooking a meal and being able to stand up for that long, and then being able to walk and being able to move around and being able to then start to get back into the administration stuff of the job. And then full time, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Like there would be times that looking back now, you know, I'd be doing administrative work. Somebody would call to sign up for a class and, you know, give their email or their phone number. And I would have to say, like, can you repeat that? Or, you know, it's like, how many times do you need somebody to repeat their phone number? It's like, well, for me, multiple times.
Right. So it's
I
that
need
post-stroke.
you to say it very slowly.
Yes. Go slow and I will be on your team. So tell me a little bit more about kind of that journey back to yoga.
It's been different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How?
I don't practice as often.
Mm-hmm.
And even the heat affects me more.
Yeah.
Now that I'm on so many medications.
Mm-hmm.
And about 6 months after I was after I had the stroke,
Right.
I was diagnosed with epilepsy.
Yeah. Tell me about that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So small things post-stroke that I thought was just my body readjusting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I'd be in the grocery store and I'd need to pause for a few seconds, or I'd get some tingling in my left hand or some tingling on the left side of my face.
Mm-hmm.
And feel, you know, frozen for 30 seconds or a minute. You know, I'd later describe these things to my neurologist, and he'd say, these are small seizures that you're having.
Wow.
Which the whole time after I got released from the hospital, I was very concerned about having another huge grand mal seizure.
Yeah.
Because that was, in my mind, just the only one that you could have.
Right.
So
that's how you would know. Yeah. I mean, I would have been the same way.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
So initially I was under 24-hour watch,
Mm-hmm.
and then it got shortened to like 8 hours and the 4 hours, and then she's okay to be on her own.
Mm-hmm.
But then over time it was, you're having these, you know, small, they're called, you know, focal seizures, where, you know, I would feel like I was frozen for a minute up to a few minutes, or like small twitches. So I'm still aware and
That's crazy.
very in tune with what's going on, but my body, or, you know, parts of, you know, muscles are affected. So my medication was increased, still not driving. So just another element added. And so for my yoga practice, the heat affects all of that.
Yeah. And you taught in a heated yoga studio.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my fitness journey just, you know, veered in a different direction. So I was teaching more group fitness. I started teaching spin
And strength.
and strength training. Yoga was always in the mix, but just not to the same extent that it was.
Well, and didn't you couldn't put your head below your heart for a long time either. Was that part of it? For some reason, I remember like down dog was not something that you, like inversions and such.
Inversions, you know, I don't necessarily know that it's not allowed, but I just
You didn't feel
personally,
it.
I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I remember specifically, like being in class and you're like, yeah, I'm not going upside down, dude. I'm fucking done with that.
I'm not doing a headstand.
No.
I don't want to.
No, I don't want to anymore. My head is a little bit.
My head's kind of sensitive.
Exactly. I have a sensitive head.
Stuff's happened up here. I don't really want to do a headstand.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to fuck it up anymore. Or like trip a switch or something. So you were having trouble with the full-time job and teaching as well. And then you had kind of a shift in your life then, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened after that?
So now I'm teaching part-time.
Mm-hmm. And that's been good for you.
It has.
And but what about like as far as the epilepsy goes, like you still have to have a lot of monitoring, right? Like you still go to the neurologist all the time. You're on different medications. And you still have seizures. Yeah,
I had a cluster, quote unquote cluster, which was a few small focal seizures. So anything that's more than one is a cluster. So I had a few yesterday.
And then like how often do you find that you have those? Is it every day or a couple times or?
Every few days with the medication. And I change medications every so often. I started a medication a little while ago that just came out, I want to say in either 2018 or 2019.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't even available when I was first diagnosed.
Right.
But yeah, it varies. I mean, now, the heat, even the outside heat, we're in, July, now August. So even that affects it. So I feel like I'm having more now than I would be in fall or winter.
Do you have to have you ever written down or journaled when you have them and how, have you seen any patterns besides the heat, stress, obviously, I'm sure does it as well?
Heat, stress, if I'm too active, there's a fine line between being active is good, but then I can overdo it a little bit.
Well, pre-stroke, you were a crazy freak because you would take your dog for a 5-mile run, and then you come and you do classes, and then you would teach a bunch of classes. You were almost like the Energizer Bunny. You had so much energy, and taking Hannah's classes in the past, you never stopped. You never were towel off, get a sip of water. It's nope. Fucking get on your mat and we're going for the whole time. And that's something that I find that I do sometimes. And every once in a while, I'm oh, maybe I should give him a break. But I always think about you because you and I never took break. Well, I think that as far as what brought you back to yoga, we pretty much answered. It's pre-stroke, post-stroke, right? And then the changes off your mat. When did you really start to notice when you got on your mat to practice post-stroke, right? Did you feel the changes happen off your mat? Did other people notice those changes? And maybe it was pre-stroke even.
It took a while post-stroke. I think it took a while post-stroke.
Yeah.
Because it took a while for me to kind of sit with it and to grieve.
Yeah.
And to just let the grief sink in and be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because like we just said, you would be out doing so much physical activity and so much movement activity. And then you come to a place where it's okay, I have to monitor. It's not at the levels that I used to be. Yeah. That is a grieving process for sure.
Yeah. So I think it wasn't until I allowed myself space to just, like you were saying, that, my classes were so high energy and just go, go, go.
Yeah.
When I allowed myself kind of off the mat space to just be still and rest, I think that's when I noticed a difference in myself. And I think hopefully other people noticed differences as well.
Oh, I did. I noticed a huge difference. I feel like it really was this centering of you, kind of coming into your own without restrictions. You know what I mean? There's restrictions, but it was more about understanding how to refrain from hurting yourself anymore or having another epileptic seizure. You know, you were able to say, okay, take a seat, pause, right? And that's hard.
It's very hard because I like to be busy.
Mm-hmm.
I like to always have something to do.
Yeah.
I like to have a full day,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's physically active or just have things to,
Check off.
on the
Yeah, exactly.
check off on the to-do list.
Yeah.
And it's taken me, my stroke was in 2015. It's taken me years to come to terms with the fact that I have to give myself space in a day to let there be space.
Well, it's almost like you got a plan. If you're a planner, right? And you have to have your checkbox, plan that space.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I'm stopping here and this hour I'm doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right? That's very cool.
Yeah. And I had a session with a cognitive rehab therapist.
Explain what that is.
So I actually don't even fully know. That was a lead up to nothing.
Yeah. I have no idea, but they were like, go see this person.
So it was going to be cognitive rehab therapy, but when we started the session, she looked at all my notes and she was like, this is going to be way too intense. I don't know if there were going to be lasers or if there was going to be so much like that it was going to cause seizures. She was like, you're not ready for this.
Wow.
What she ended up doing was just talking to me like a therapy session for the hour. And she said, you need brain breaks. You need to give yourself brain breaks.
Yeah.
And at some point I must have said I'll take time and watch TV or, be on my phone. She's like, that's not
A brain break.
It's not a brain break.
Right.
Being on your phone scrolling is not a brain break. Watching TV, you're still actively watching something.
Yeah.
You're not giving your brain a break. You need to be resting your brain. So just like you're physically active in your body,
Yeah.
when you rest your body, you need to rest your brain as well.
That's meditation.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
she
being,
said meditate, or if you're going to, some tricks for me, she advised were, if you are reading something, don't have music on because your brain cannot focus while those two things are going on.
Oh, so like multitasking kind of things.
So like your brain cannot multitask.
Yeah.
So don't.
That's a really good point because we were just talking about this last night at dinner. Like I like to listen to podcasts while I'm cleaning the house, but am I really multitasking?
I have found, because I love podcasts as well, I found I will listen to a podcast while I'm walking my dog. When I get home, if I still am listening to the podcast, all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what did they just say? What? I like lose focus completely.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's something like the movement kept you focused. And then when you stop, it goes away, like, taking the sound away when you're reading almost. I don't know. That's weird. So what can others learn from your story, Hannah? What do you want people to learn about? Because you're really passionate about working with the Epilepsy Foundation.
I am. Yeah.
And you're running.
I am not running.
Oh, you're not running. Okay, good.
So that is something also.
Good.
I think the biggest thing that people can learn from my story is to be intuitive and listen to what your mind and your body are telling you. Because I am fundraising for the Epilepsy Foundation of Greater Chicago. And the plan initially was I signed up for the Chicago Marathon in October, raising funds. I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to run the marathon. I feel great. I started going for some runs. My body was like, nope.
Yeah.
This is not, it's hot.
Yeah.
Long runs, started having some seizures. Few more weeks, I was still trying. In the back of my mind, I was like, maybe we could do this. Maybe, no.
Yeah.
So I'm still going to raise the amount that I committed to for the Epilepsy Foundation.
We'll put this in the show notes as well.
Thank you. So yes, and if you go on to my Instagram, I have the link in my bio for the fundraising.
Good.
But I will not be running.
So you will be making signs and holding up signs.
Cheering on everybody that is running and fundraising for the Epilepsy Foundation. But yeah, even if you have, the best of intentions, when your body just is telling you something, listen to it. When your brain is telling you something, listen to it. There was a full week where my brain was like, you need to go to the hospital. So I was like, that's probably not that bad.
But it was. You needed it.
Listen.
So where can people find you?
On Instagram at Hannah Pintea, Pintea.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's hard to talk about this kind of stuff, and I appreciate you being open and honest about it. Yeah. It means the world to me, and you know that I'll always be your driver.
Yeah, thank you so much. And honestly, if anybody has any questions, please DM me. I love talking about this. I'm passionate about the Epilepsy Foundation. There are so many different types of epilepsy. 1 in 26 people in the United States alone is affected by epilepsy or seizure disorders. So please reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, share your stories. Remember, this is why we did this podcast is yoga impacts people, and it's not just the movement of yoga. It's the big why yoga, right? It's the way we carry ourselves through life. And, you know, for you to come out and share your story and be vulnerable, hopefully someone out there can relate and we can make this a little bit better for all, right? Leave it a little bit better than the way we found it.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Man, it was really weird not having you there to interview Hannah with me.
Yeah, no, I definitely a first for us. But I appreciate you letting me get to listen in and be a part of it in a different kind of way.
Yeah, it was really neat. I mean, just getting to hear her story after it's been 8 years since she's had her stroke, and the fact that her whole life has changed, really. You know, she can't drive. She had to cut down on her teaching. But, you know, one thing, Hannah's got an incredibly supportive foundation. She has a lovely husband, Ted. She has her mom and her dad right down the street. You know, she's got a really good base of people. It just was neat to hear her story once again and really understand that there are tools out there that can help you get through some tough times in your life. And that's that big why yoga we keep talking about. The thing with Hannah is that she is such a strong-willed, like independent person. And whenever I'm teaching like a real high intense energy class, I always think about her because she was never the person that would let you take a child's pose. Like she would offer it, obviously, and say like, hey, you can take child's pose whenever, you can rest whenever. But Hannah would never let us rest. Like she would push all the way through class. And she still does that. She just has recognized that she can't do that every single day. She has to take care of her mind and her body. And when she's having these like little seizures that happen, it's a very scary experience, I'm assuming. And it's very scary to watch. I've seen her have these little tiny seizures, these focal seizures, as I think is what she called them. And it was just hard because you see someone who has so much to give, but is struggling right now with kind of this new mind-body connection, right? Like I can't even imagine what that would be like. It's hard enough being as old as we are and having to, you know, figure out our mind-body connection. But she had at 29, she was on her way to it. And then it changed dramatically.
She also speaks to, I mean, you said she has so much to give, and I'm sure there's still things that she's able to offer. But I think she spoke to it a lot of now it's this very, very active practice of listening to her body, this very, very active practice of being aware of that mind-body connection. And it's just necessary now, especially as, you know, moving forward and looking at what that means and looks like for a life moving forward after this diagnosis, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, being intuitive and really listening to how your body feels does not happen when you're sitting scrolling on the internet or, you know, TikTok or Instagram. It doesn't happen when you're listening to a podcast. It doesn't happen when you're watching TV. Unfortunately, it happens when you're still and silent. And that is probably one of the hardest things that someone can do is be still, be silent, and really tune inward.
Yeah, it's definitely hard, but I think what's really cool about the studies that have been done around mindfulness or breath work or meditation practices is that even just these short stints of like 5 minutes and how much it can affect the rest of your day, it just makes it so worth it to have that time for yourself.
Absolutely. And Hannah talked a lot about brain breaks, right? Where she has to kind of take a break. And a lot of us are multitaskers, right? And I don't think that there's anything wrong with being a multitasker. For example, my favorite thing to do if I have to clean the floors in my house is I've got my headphones in and I'm listening to podcasts. I feel like for me, that's a really kind of concentrative way because I'm moving my body, I'm moving the mop, I'm moving the vacuum, and I can pay attention to what I hear. But a lot of times, if you're trying to do too many things at one time and you're not giving yourself that few moments of complete and utter stillness in your day, like even listeners, if you've never meditated before, put a timer on for 3 minutes and just sit quietly for 3 minutes. If you try that and then notice the difference, the impact it has on your day.
Yeah. I think also, and I don't know exactly what was said, but I was reading this book and think like a monk, Jay Shetty, and that we like to think that we can be multitaskers, but it's like actually quite impossible to do two tasks simultaneously.
Oh, tell me more.
It's just like, I think our brain's capacity, like, of course we know we're physically doing them, but our full consciousness is not given to either. And so when he lived as a monk, like even something like cleaning the floors, you were expected to be thinking about cleaning the floors. How are we cleaning the floors, right? And so like,
I can't be a monk.
yeah, which is just so interesting. And by no means do I want to do that, honestly.
No, I don't either. Yeah, no.
But around this idea of, I think also, because obviously a lot of us have this capacity to maybe take on multiple tasks at once, right? But it's not getting 100% of our capacity. And then I would imagine once you've kind of dealt with this, brain trauma of some sort, as Hannah has, that becomes even more difficult. And that's why those brain breaks where you're able to just, one, kind of rest in certain ways, and then two, give yourself a singular task once again, are so restorative.
Absolutely. And I really feel like for her, she's learned like, hey, if it's hot outside, or if I'm teaching in a heated studio, or if I have, I've taken a long walk with the dog in the morning and then I'm not eating, breakfast, or I eat later. Like she can tell now because she's being very conscious of what is happening inside rather than worrying about the outside. And I think that all of us can learn that lesson about tuning inward, because the only thing that we can control is ourselves. That's it. We can't fucking control anyone else in this world, even as much as we try to. And if we look at it more from the perspective of what are the little tasks that I can do to make myself more in tune with what I need in the moment, we're going to be happier, healthier people, being able to participate in life in a greater way. So I think it'll be cool when we do our follow-up episode. We'll include a breathwork exercise that is really cool. And we're just really excited that we can take this podcast on the road and go to different cities and hopefully one day go to different countries. We have a lot of followers in Australia and in the UK. Shout out to all of our friends in Melbourne, Victoria. Since we started doing this podcast, it has opened up an entirely different side of my yoga practice for me. It's made me feel more connected to my body, my breath, my movement, but also that union of others, that other people, not only can we learn from them, but we can embrace them and support them along their journeys. And I hope that if there's anyone out there that this episode can connect with, then we made a difference. And that's all we want to do. So you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Yoga Changed. We would love to hear your comments, your feedback, your stories. You can send them to us at yogachanged@gmail.com. We're just really loving all of the different interviews that we have coming up. We have some really neat ones, but we still would love to hear from anyone else all over the world. So with all that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.